Hello everyone. Good evening to all, and welcome to the first session of the workshop From Zero to Hero in Python. This is a partnership project between Benzyme Ventures and Edvicon International. Before we start the session, I would like to make some announcement to all the participants. We will share a link to collect your attendance during the session. Please make sure to fill the necessary details, and we are going to close that link once the session is over. There will be a separate link to submit your questions. Those will be discussed in Q&A session. And for the ones who participate through our FB Lives, we will share the same links in the comment section at the same time. So please follow up these links during the session. So, behalf of Benzyme Ventures and Edvicon International, I would like to welcome our speaker, Mr. Fikri Ismail, who is a well-experienced software developer on various technologies and also an award winner by Microsoft as the most valuable professional 15 times in a row. He is the founder of Peach IT and global technical speaker and communicate leader. So, Mr. Fikri, I warmly welcome you to conduct today's session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. So let's get started. So my name is, I think already they have mentioned my name. My name is Fikri Ismail, and I'm a Microsoft MVP for developer technologies for like 15 years. So actually I'm a developer. So I have, again, I have an experience in more than 15 years on developing technologies using .NET and Delphi and various web technologies and JavaScript technologies as well. So to start with, I will share my screen, and let me just turn off my video because that will be not required. Just turn off. Yes, I'm sharing my screen. Screen 3. Yes. I hope you can just see my screen here. Yes. Right?
Yes,
we can see.
Yeah. The screen is okay. Now I load my Visual Studio Code. So normally I'll just start with Visual Studio Code. If you are joining today, so if you are a new student, maybe you might not have experience on Python, or if you are like you were in last couple of sessions as well. So let's get started. So I have this is Visual Studio Code, the latest version running on Windows 11, and I am using Python here. Let me just show you what the Python version I'm using. So on your command prompt, I'll just, now it should be visible. Clear. I'm using Python version 3.97. So that's the version I'm using right now. And on Visual Studio Code, I have installed Visual Studio Code, plus I have installed few extensions here. So this color theme, the GitHub theme, and then Jupyter notebooks, and as well as this PowerShell, the Prettier, and then the Python extensions. If you just search for Python extensions, you will get everything from Microsoft, and you can just use it because it will allow you to, and yeah, that's it. And the material icon theme, the icon theme is like for any icons you'll be seeing in the left side here. If you just start, I'll just start with my exercise 1.python. So you will see these will be coming from that. So last week, what we did was like we just talked about, we have, I think, we have talked about lists and usage of those lists. Right, to start with. So normally I used in the class, I use two ways of teaching on this Python technology. First one will be I'm using a Python file, else I'll be using a Jupyter notebook. Jupyter notebook can be installed if you have Python installed, and then you have a Visual Studio Code using extensions. You can just install, search for Jupyter notebooks, and you will get that one, right? So to create a Jupyter notebook, you can just, it should be a file extension here. You can just new file. Maybe you can just say notebook 4 dot, the extension will be ipy.nb, right? When you enter it, you will get an interface like this. I'm going to close my terminal here, right? You will get this interface like this. And you can just use any Python code here. Shift enter. I'm using this Python 3.9. Yes. Now you have, because I have two versions of Python, Python 10 and 9. 3.10 and 3.9. I'm using 3.9 here. So you can use anything here. So for example, last time I did like colors, and I created a list like red, green, blue, white. This is a list, right? So we already know that, and we have a list here. Then we can just, if you want to call this list, you can just say just colors. So you will see this one. So last week we learned about those things. And then we move into different. Now today we're going to learn about how to get this information from list, because it will, we are going to learn a new loop. Last time we used to learn this one like called the while loop. Now today we're going to learn about the for loop, right? So let's get started. Now let's learn about for loop. So to start with, before this one, I'm gonna install, like, let's see how do you gonna know about these things. Like for example, I have an example like these numbers, and I have 1, 3, 5, right? So if we just print like this, what will happen? Print 5 in numbers. What will happen? Let's save it and say numbers. We have a set of numbers here. Let me get my zoom. Right? We have set of numbers here, and then we can just say print 5 numbers. Let me go back to my command prompt. I'm gonna create a clear list. You will have example 1.python. I'm gonna say Python ex1.py. This is how you execute, and then you will get true. See, so then this area true. That means this area acts like a, what do you call, a Boolean expression, right? A Boolean expression. Then you can just use this as this. Like for example, I'm going to enter another number, a number. Let's say a number. Where is that? A number is 5. Let's say if a number in numbers, then you remember these things. Remember colon, and then when you print a number, you can just say F, a number found in the list. What will happen? Let's say, let's try this code again. You go back, you can say Python ex1 tab. See, 5 found in the list. So that's one way of checking these things, like in a list, whether the number is continuing. If you just say 6, you can just say else and print number you have entered is not found. Just say like, save it. Look at the blocks. See, you see the block here. So always Python has indenting. You have to remember this thing when you're programming Python. And let's go back to my code and just clear the screen and then run the Python code, and let's say number you have entered is not found. That means because I have entered 6, right? So that's how it is now. Let's go back to this number. Again, you can just do the same. I'll just remark these things. And you can just say number 5. Let's say the same thing, print a number in numbers. This is one way of doing it, right? And I'm going to say like this, print, let's say like this, 8 not in numbers. Remember this one? So what will happen? Let's try back. We use these expressions on if conditions. Now both are true because 8 is not in the numbers. It is not there, but 5 is there. So in, not in. You can just leverage those things, right? So make sure you just remember these things when you just work with this. Let's go back to actual code. So I did this because you need to remember last time we stopped it there. Now let's create another list called cities. But cities, you can say Chicago, comma, you're gonna say London, comma, let's say Tokyo. Tokyo. Right? Now look at the syntax, right? This is how you work with the for loop. Normally what we say is like for in, this is the loop. Right? This is how it works. For in, the syntax will look like this. Let's say for something, some variable, a variable, and in your list, the collection, whatever the collection or the list here. This is how it works. So let's say like this, for city in cities. Now you can just say print city. So what will happen was like in the in, it will just go through each variable, each item, and then it will just grab that one item and then put it back here on this item, and it comes back. 1 second. So let me get my right. So if you look at these things, let me go back here. So it will happen like this. Now, when you start these cities, now you have, what will happen was, if say for city in cities, what will happen was like it will pick up the first item from here, right? From this list, see, because this is the same list, and we'll put it back to this variable. Sorry, so this variable, right? This is how it happens. Let me show you back. Now, what will happen was, it will get one city from this list, the first one, and we'll put it back to this variable. And it will print the city, Chicago, and then it will go back to this one, and then put it back again. Again, it will go back to this one and back again. Depending on the number of list items you got, it will go through each element and put it back into this variable, and the variable contains the current element. So let's try that one. So let's try it in my Visual Studio. And I'm going to say Python same thing and execute, and you will see Chicago, London, Tokyo, right? Each element are printed without an issue, right? That's how you do that. So let's go back to my Visual Studio. So this is one way of printing the city, right? Now you can just do the same thing like we did with our while loop. You can just break from the for loop as well if you want. Like, let me remark these things and then go back into the top, create another variable called numbers, and create numbers. I'm going to enter some numbers here in the list. Let's say I'll get some numbers from here. I'll enter it here and say these are my numbers, 42, some list, some items. So then I'm going to call it like, this one, what will happen? Numbers.sort. What will happen? So it will happen, it will sort according to from lowest to the greatest. Now next step I'm going to use the for loop again for number in numbers. If we just say print numbers, sorry, number, each number, if we save it, you know what will happen? It will automatically will print all the numbers. Let's say, see, to get the numbers 4, 8, because we sorted, the 4 will be on the first and everything else will be like this. So let's go back to my Visual Studio and we do something like this. Now, what I'm going to say is just do this. I'm going to say if the number greater than 42, right? What will happen? I'm going to say, let's break the loop. So it will print till 42. Then if it reaches this 42, and then it will stop. Last time what happened? It was like it printed to this list. See, 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42, and then rest of this list. Now we have this, and I'm going to save that one and then come back here. I'm going to say print, and then it will just print until on the 42. That means the loop got break here. What happened was like number, it will check the number. If it is greater than 42, that means still 42, still be false. And then if it's greater than means true, and then break the loop, right? So this is how it works. Next step is like on the while loop. We're going to create the, let me introduce the both loops. Like we use an else. Remember we use in the while loop as well. Let's say now we have created some random numbers here. Now let's enhance this program. We have created some random numbers here, saying we just hard coded these numbers. Let's do another example like this. Example 2 dot Python. Let's enhance the app. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create import random. Last time we did this. I'm going to import the random. Now I'm going to create a blank array here. So a blank list. Blank list means nothing is there, right? This is import random and create a blank list. That means there is nothing in here. Next step what I'm going to do is, if look at this one, there's a command called length. So if you just say help length, and when you save it, you run this one, let's clear it. Example 2, see, it says help built-in function length is module built-ins. Returns the number of items in a container. This in this case, the list, there is number of content. So what will happen if you just say print, let's say number of items equals length numbers. Here it should be numbers. And let's try to print it. Items. Save it. Go back to your code, and then you're going to say execute. It says 0. There is nothing there. See, there is nothing there. It says 0. So let's add some numbers. 1, 2, 3. Let's say 3 and save it. Come back again. Now it will say 3. See, you have 3 elements. That's how it says. So now we know how the what is the length function is. Let's delete this to delete. And make sure we have. Now I'm going to use another loop to populate these things. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say when, while length of numbers, okay, if it is greater than less than 5, that means if it is less than 5, numbers dot append means add a random number, random int. I'm going to say 1 to 100, whatever the numbers from 1 to 100, just get a random number and append to this numbers array. If you just after appending, you just say like this, print. Now we are using the last week's lesson, what we learned, the while loop. Look what will happen. Every time you run, there will be 5 random numbers, right? Let's go back to the code and say execute this code. Now you have 99, 74, something like that. If you execute again, there will be another random number. See? So 3 different things. Say 3 different times. Some random numbers. This is nicely working because now we have some random numbers stored in our list. So let's see. Now next time, let's go each number. 4 number in numbers, go inside the loop, and I'm going to say print the number. Yes, print the number. each number. Yes, that's okay. Now, if number is greater than or equal to 90, I'm just checking it. I'm going to say print found at least one number greater than 90. Right? I'm going to break the loop. So let's break the loop. If it is 9 greater than or equal to 90, then we found something. And then look at this. If I put an else here, right? If I put an else here, it will treat it for this if statement because of the indenting matching. So I'm not going to put the else here. I'm going to put the else here. This one means like we did in the last time on the, so it will, the else is for this one. That means everything, we didn't found anything because it goes through everything, and then that means we didn't find anything. Then we can just say print, let's say no numbers greater than 90. I'm going to explain this code again, you will understand. And finally, I'm going to print complete. Let's save it and try to execute this one. Right? Let's go back to my code. I'm going to say clear and see. Now we have this number 679 and we have 97 and say found at least one number greater than 90. Let's execute back again. Now we have the second time. So we might not find, we might found, right? So at the moment we are getting numbers. Now see, it says no numbers. So if you look at this example, we found something and then we say found at least one number greater than 90, yes, and complete. Now we just went through all the numbers, but still we have no numbers greater than 90. Now the else did work, right? This is how it works. Now if you look at the code, let me explain one by one. So this is the entire code. Yes, let's keep it as it is. Yeah. So line 1, line 3, what happens? Line 3, what we do was like we import a standard library within Python called random. And then this line, what we did was like we created a blank list. Blank list means there is no elements. If we just do the count, you will say, okay, you will get 0. That's okay. Now, we're using a while loop to populate this array. What will happen was, so we'll say while length numbers. At the moment, numbers, the length will be 0. And 0 is less than 5. That's true. Yes. And then we can say numbers, this array. Right? I'm going to say this array, this list, append any random number to this one. So that's what will happen. I'm going to say, okay. Now when you come to this line, that means we appended, there will be a one element. That will be 1. And you can say 1 is less than 5. That means yes, true. Again, append another one. It will be 2. Until it reaches 5, then it will check 5 is greater than, no, 5 is equal, then it will fail and the loop will be exited, right? So this is how it happens. Now next time you will have 2 different blocks, code blocks here. The first code block is if code block. See, the if code block. If code block, what will happen was, okay, numbers, we have numbers. We have 5 numbers in the array. Now the number 4 will, what will happen was number in numbers. That means pick one number and put it inside this variable number. Then print. It will print something, whatever the random number, it will print. And then next line, this block. What will happen on this block was, if you look at this block. See, this blue area, this block, what will happen? I'm going to say, check whether the number is greater than or equal to 90. If the random number is greater than or equal to 90, and it will print this message and it will break. Break means out of the loop, this loop, 4 and this area, the break will be happening like this. So this one, and it will break the loop. So if you didn't find anything, that means it will go through each and every number, and then finally to say the loop is completed, else nothing to complete, and then it will go under no numbers greater than 0. Because if you found something, it will break the loop here. Else it will go through each element and then it will exit. Finally, it will print the complete message, right? So whatever. So if you look at these things, if this message will be printed only if there is something, only there are numbers greater than 90. Else all the loop is go. So one of these messages will be printed, but the complete message will be always printed because everything is out of these blocks. So while block, for block, and the if block. So everything is indented nicely. So you will understand that. Now you understand that code. We have into each line of this code, right? So let's go back to the next example. Again, the continue statement, right? So we have this example. I'm going to delete this notebook. I don't need that one. So delete it and create another one. ex3.python py close. Let's look at the continue keyword. Again, I'm going to create some values here, any random values. So values, I took this variable. I'm going to create a string here, say laptops, and a number. Let's say laptop, and another one called phone. See, so and 3. I'm going to create a DSLR and 5. So some random strings and numbers. So now let's say equipment. I'm going to create another variable called equipment equals a blank list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up these equipments, laptop, phone, and DSLR, and put it inside this array in this list. So that's why we're going to use the continue keyword. So let's try that one. So for value in values, we have to loop through each item inside this list. Next step. Now there's a method called isInstance. See? So isInstance means what will happen was it will just check with two different parameters. The first parameter will be the object, and the second parameter will be the type. For example, if you look at like this, I'm going to say print type and each value. So for learning purposes, I'm going to say print the type of this each value. So let's go back to my array. It's clear. And I'm going to say Python ex3.py. See what happened. So we got a string here, integer, string, integer, string, integer. So that's the one we're going to trap and test. So we know the laptop, phone, DSLR are strings. And then if we trap the elements, we get this one and move it inside this array, we get the equipment list, right? So this is how isInstance supports. You can just check whether if isInstance, whether it's an instance of isInstance means check the first one is the object, which is the value, and the second one is the type. I'm going to say string. Now it will check for strings. If the value is a string, yes. If it is a string, and then I'm going to say continue. Yes, please continue. And equipment dot append and the value. Why we're going to use the continue, right? What will happen was, let's try the code and print the equipment list, right? Let's save it. Let's try code. I'm going to explain the code line by line. Let's try whether the code is working or not. Let's say, okay. See, now it says 7, 3, and 5. So it didn't work because it picks up the, now what happened was, now says if instance true, continue, and it doesn't pick up anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to check back whether like this, if it's false. So because if it's true means it's a string, but if it is false, that means it's a number, and then should continue back. Let's try it again. Save the code, go back, and now we got the laptop, the phone, and DSR. Let me check. Let me show you how it worked. Right. Let's go back to my code. Yes, everything is visible right now. This is straightforward. We know right now because we created a list of strings and numbers or integers. Laptop is a string. This is a number, string, number, string, number. Now we have created a blank list to store the equipment. Now, next step. Now what we're going to do is like we just do the same. We create a for loop, iterate through each value and put it back here in the value. Now we're going to check this area. If instance, this value, now the first one is laptop. It picks up laptop. From here, it will pick up laptop and then put it back here. So now we got that value. So laptop is here, and then whether is instance, that means string, yes, then it will return this entire statement will return a true value, right? And then we can just say whether it is checked for false values. False values mean it should be a number. So now we're going to say false. False means it's a string, so it doesn't go inside. Now it's a string, it's true, but it doesn't match. It won't go inside this part, and then it will add an equipment to this blank list, right? Then it goes back and picks the second value. Values in value, that means 7. Now whether we're going to check is instance of 7 is a string. No, it will be say false. Now false is equal to false. Yes, the boolean true, and then continue means it won't go down this way. It won't go down this way. What will happen was it will go back to this for loop and it will continue here. So then this won't trigger. So there is no value entered, right? So now it will add everything and then finally it will print it out. This is one way of doing it. The another way of doing it, like we can just try this way. You can just say this is true and I'm going to say not true. That means false. Let's try that. And do the same. Let's go back and then execute, clear. See, the answer is the same. So this is more clean. So not a string. So this is one way of doing it, right? So you can just say check for false values, or you can just say, please invert the output. It will be true. No, I'm going to check for false. Goes back, right? So you can do the same this way or the other way. Let's save it, right? So this is one way. Now let's open another code and say example 4.python. Now let's look at nested for loops. Nested means loop within a loop, right? Let's check. Now I'm going to create two different arrays here. List. First one is like suits. Another one says ranks, right? Let me copy paste some elements here. So we are looking at some card patching. See, hearts, spades, clubs, and diamonds. Now the ranks will be the numbers of the card pack. See. So now we have a list of, let's hide this. See, now you have suits, hearts, spades, club, diamonds. The rank should be 2, 3, 4, the cards. So always there will be hearts of 2, spades of 3, hearts of 2, hearts of 3, hearts of 4, hearts of 5, like that. And then again, same thing, right? So now, how are you gonna display all the entire card pack, right? So we have an array, a list saying hearts, spades, clubs, diamonds, and we have this list. This is how you loop through. First, it should be like this. I'm gonna say 4 loop through the suits, each suit and suites. So we have the suites in a suite. It's one loop, right? The other one you can just write, go through the each rank, 4 rank in ranks. Now print. Say format this one, let's say format this one, saying I'm going to say rank of suite. So now we have a nested loop here. Say for suite in suites, say for rank in ranks. Go through. Let's see how the code works. Then I will explain line by line how it was executed. Say, let's see. Go back to my terminal. Where's my terminal? Yes. I'm going to say clear. Say Python ex4.python. See, now everything worked. See, now 2 of hearts, 3 of hearts, and then 10 of jack of hearts, and queen of hearts, and ace of hearts. So one block is done here. And the second block, 2 of spades. So what happened was, go back to my code. What happened was, this is what happened. The first loop is this. The first one, we have this array. Now second, we have another ranks, right? So what will happen was, it will pick up the first suit here. So and then in suites, that means it will pick up hearts. And now we have created another loop inside this loop. See, now we have hearts here. The hearts will be always hearts here. And the ranks will be 2 to ace. So we'll start with 2, and it says 2 of these hearts, 3 of hearts, 4 of hearts, like that until it's completed this array, and it will go back here, this area. It will go back and then pick up the second spades, and it comes with spade inside this loop, and it comes back again inside this loop and says again it started 2, 3, 4, and print of 2 of spades, 3 of spades, like that. So it will go. This is called a nested loop, right? Now, so I hope you understood this one. So we can just use these loops into get information from list, right? So let's go back to another example. Yeah, let's keep this as it is. Let's close these two and come back to my code. I'm going to start with another example called example5.python, right? This will be again, I'm going to create. This is another thing we're going to use with these for loops, or maybe you can just say picking up a list, something from list, right? So I'm going to say pick up items randomly from a list. That's what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to pick up something like some items from a list randomly, not sequentially, right? So I have this again, import random, simple code, because now you have to think about the logic, right? How are you going to do that? So I'm going to create the random because it should be random, and it should be, now let's create another array of a list of numbers. Let's copy paste that number list. I already have that number list paste, so otherwise I have to type everything, right? Now you have the list. I'm going to pick up something, a random number. Maybe one time I'm going to try 23. Maybe next time it should be 16, whatever the numbers, right? So next step I'm going to do is like, I'm going to select something like this. This is how you do that. I'm going to say selected number equals inside random. Now you have a, remember random int. Random int is like what we did was like we create A to B. That means 1 to 5, create a random number between 1 or 5. That's one way of doing it. But now what I'm going to do is like selected number. I'm going to use the same random command, random.choice. See, create, get a choice. Choice means, so look at the example. It says function choice. please enter a sequence here. See? A sequence. Sequence means a list. Whatever the list. Sequence means now I'm going to enter, say sequence is my numbers. Get something, a random. Okay. Now let's say print selected number and save it. Let's try this code. Let's clear. I'm going to say Python and run example. So how many examples we have right now? 5. Example 5. Now it picks up 55, whatever the random number. Again, it picks up another number. See? Now you know how it works. If you want something like this, a random number or random item from a list, you can just do that. Right? Clear. Let's go back. Now, look what will happen here. Now I'm going to say select. If you want to get something, imagine this is one number. Imagine if you want to pick up 3 numbers, 3 random numbers from this list. Right? This is how you're going to use that. I'm going to say numbers. So random, same thing, choice. Now this time I'm going to use choices. Right? Because you're going to pick up multiple numbers. See? Let's say sequence and then the weights. So let's say I'm going to say numbers, yes, and then K. See, look at this value K. So we'll read the documentation. You will see this is the K value here, and it should be something. And in how many numbers? Return a K size list. See, K size list means the numbers. So what I'm going to do is like this. I'm going to create the K equals, let's say 3 numbers, pick up 3, right? So I'm going to save it. I'm going to print selected numbers now, save, go back to the code, execute. Now you have 4, a random number again, some random 3 numbers. See, another 3 numbers. See, look what happens. So we have repeated here. So again, another 3 numbers. So you know how to use these things, right? Now let's do something, write a small program, a card, like a code, which is like, imagine this example. So right, what I'm going to do is like, so you're gonna deal, like remember if you have played cards, you're gonna do a deal, right? You get some random cards with some random. For example, you can just say hearts of 2, 2 of hearts, you get 4 of spades and 6 of clubs, and or maybe 8 of maybe king of diamonds. So you can just pick up some random cards. So I'm going to use the same thing, and I'm going to create a small program. Let's start with that. I'm going to say example 6.python. I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these 2. I need these 2. Close. Let's copy that one. Right? These 2. Now I'm going to use top of the code. Let's say import random. That's done. Save the code. That one. Again, I'm going to create another one. Normally with the card pack, we call it as a deck, right? I'm going to create a variable called deck. Now we have this one and we have these things, right? What I'm going to do is like first, I'm going to add each one of these cards into the deck. So that means 52 of these decks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 into 4 means 13 into 4 is 52. So you will get 52 of these cards in a deck. So that's why I'm going to fill this deck with this array. How are you going to do that? Using 2 different nested for loops. First, 4 sweet in sweets. That's one step. Again, 4 go over each rank in ranks. Finally, deck dot append. I'm going to say format rank of suit. Right? You have a nice little card deck right now. If you want to just test it, then you say print deck. Let's save it and test this part of the code. Let's click here. Let's say clear. We have 6 Python examples. Python example 6. Py. See, now we have a nice little card pack saying 2 of hearts, 3 of hearts, 4 of hearts. Nice little card pack. So if you want to count the list of these things, like how many cards are there, you can just say print length of deck. You'll understand how it worked. Save, go back to my code, execute, clear, and execute. See, now we have that matches. We have 52 here. See, we have 52. That's okay. Go back to my code. Now I delete these two. Nice. Right. Next step. Now I'm going to say a message. I'm going to display a message as print. The same thing what it is. If there are C length of the deck cards in the deck. The first step. So I'm going to say, okay, we have this amount of cards in the deck. This is how you write a small program now. So now that works. Now, next time I'm going to delete, print. I'm going to say delete. That means you shuffle it out, and then deal a card pack. If you're playing the cards, you just shuffle it and you just, maybe I'm going to say, okay, 5 cards for somebody. I'm gonna give it that card randomly. It will pick up randomly those cards, right? For this point of now till line 14, we know what we have done. Next time, the dealing part. So we have learned to get some information, right? What should happen? So we learn about the choice method inside random. That means it will pick up one random element. And then choices means it will pick up one or more random element, right? Now we have. So we have a deck and we have our cards. Now we have a set of cards. Now next step will be, we call it as a hand. So normally we give that card to another person. We call it as a hand, right? Hand. And then next step, while say length of the hand, okay, less than 5. That means until you have 5 cards. That's the dealing part. I'm going to deal 5 cards to a person. Hand, it's called an hand. I'm going to say let length less than 5. Make sure, then pick up a card, okay, equals random dot choice, pick up one random card from the deck, okay. Next step, what should happen was, okay, what will happen, your deck, you have like 52 cards. If you give one card to a person, this 52 should be 51. That means one of the elements from the card, the deck should be removed. So there is a method called, in the array you can say deck. We learn these things, deck remove, and that particular card. And okay, remove from the deck and then hand append to that card. So now this is what happens in this code. See, it happens. We have a nice little code right now. Let's go back to, now let's print out the message. I'm going to say print F. So I'm going to copy the same thing here. Now let's count the number of cards. That's there. And next step, I'm going to print saying player has the following cards in their hand. So the player has this amount of cards. I'm going to say print hand. See, let's try this code. Let's go back. I will explain line by line. So for now, let's execute the code. It's clear. Now execute. See, now it will say there are 52 cards in the deck. I'm going to delete. Now there are 47 cards in the deck. Player has the following cards in their hand, which is 2 of diamonds, 3 of hearts, 4 of diamonds, and 8 of spades, and 7 of spades. These are the card numbers, right? So let's go back to the code. Let's start from the beginning. Let's no. Let's start from the top. Yeah. Now this is straightforward. We know this one. We imported a random standard library. This standard library from your Python. Now we have created two lists here. Two different lists, which is the suits and the ranks. Ranks is 2 and then hearts, you know. And then we created a blank list here like we did. Next step was this area. What we did was like we created. Now what we did was like we went through each the suit. We went through each suit and then we went through each rank for each suit, and then we append it inside this to this array. Right now, this array will be the same here. Then say like this one will be the same. So what will happen? Append and append. Everything will be inside that one. Next up, next step what we did was like, okay, we just calculate the length of that cards in the deck. We said, okay, if you look at it, you will say there are some number of this in this moment. It is 52 cards in the deck. Now we printed a message saying dealing. Next line, what we did was like we said, okay, now the hand, whoever we are dealing with, the hand should be at the moment at the start. There are nothing there, no cards. We haven't dealt yet, so that's why it's a blank array, right? So in the loop, let's go back to the loop. Here, now we have our blank hand. Right? Next time, what we did was like we check the length of that hand. See, same thing. We check that length from the same hand. At the moment, it is which is 0, and 0 is less than 5. Yes, true. And card, we assigned another variable. We picked up because we learned choice. It will pick up from the something from random, whatever the deck is, and put it here. So what we did was like after getting a random card, we removed that card. So this same card, see, it's the same thing here, same card. So we have removed that one. Now next step, okay, we removed from the deck and then to the hand, we added that card. So until 5 rounds, it goes through, and then what will pick up a random card, remove it from the deck and add to the hand. Pick up a random card, remove it from the deck and add to the hand. That will happen. Next time, what we did was like we printed out whatever the message we want. There are like length amount of cards in the deck right now. That means because we removed, the number will be decreased because we removed every loop. We removed that part, and then player has this card because hand will be printed here with the loop. So this is how we did. Now we learned about something. We wrote a code, a small code, which is doing something, which is creating a deck of cards, and then we deal it, and then we'll just create a hand of that card, right? So this is, now we learned a lot of things last couple of weeks till now. Now we are going to move into like a bit complex, not complex, which is it's bit like a next level. Now we learn some beginner level. Now it will be just like an intermediate expert level. So we are going to talk about some. Let me open my this one. Yeah. Let me open my drawing board. Today we're going to learn about some object-oriented concepts on Python. Right? Object-oriented concepts on Python. I'm gonna increase the font to 40. Right? We're gonna learn about some object-oriented concepts. What is an object? And what is object-oriented? This is sometimes we call it like double OP. Another one object-oriented concept we're going to learn about other things called object-oriented programming, OOP, object-oriented programming. So you get this object-oriented programming. Right, that's one word we're going to learn. Another one we're going to learn like this. What is the versus procedural. When you use procedural programming, what's the differences? So these are the things you have to learn, right? So for example, to start with, procedural programming, we already knew from Python. We already did that from Python. What we did, we created this, like for example, what we can do is like we can just say this entire thing, or maybe everything. We created def. Remember, we created saying def deal a deck, and we can just say do something, right? So this will be a procedure or a function. So writing functions will be on a program which will call a procedural program. We don't deal about any objects. So what is an object? Object, imagine this person, right? I want to say person. Let's say person, right? This is a person. So normally we say a person in real world, we look like this. I'm going to get another one. This is a car, right? This is a car. Normally what we say, this is okay car. Now we have a car and we have a person, right? So now if we look at these cars, these are in the real world, we are looking at like this. We look at like this. This is the way of the world, right? So everything is an object. It has something like we can just say car. If you just we get another one, let's say we'll just create a car and then we'll style it. We're gonna say we change the name and what we would discuss. It's a car. Now I'm going to say it's a green car, right? So this is a car, a black car, a green car. But generally we can just say this is a car. And then person, we can just say a person. Yes, a person. Oops. I'm going to say Fikri. Fikri is a person, right? Or you can just say another one, another person. You can just say another person. Say Prabhat is another person, right? But still these are people. So in real world, we treat like that. A person, we can just normally we can just say if we don't know something, we can just say person. If we don't know about the properties of this person, or maybe we know about the characteristics of this person, we can say, oh, this is Fikri and this is Prabhat. It's two different people, right? Again, this same thing. You have a car in the outside, you will say this is yes a car, but it's we can just say a Honda. You can just say this is a Toyota, like that. Or maybe we can just say this is a hybrid, this is a normal car, like that. So these, we in the world, we treat everything like objects, right? In programming languages, what we do is like we just say, okay, we just in real world, these things, we create these things as models inside your program, right? You can just say, look at this. Okay, we have a person like me, Fikri, and we have a car saying, let me say, a Honda. Like in the real world, it looks like this. But what we're going to in the programming, like when we model means we just get this information and we create a common area, common model for everybody. So for that model, we just say Fikri, and then we have another person called, let's say, Kamal, and these are people, right? Or maybe let's say another person called Kenoli. So, no. So each and individual have similar characteristic. So we pick up those things and then we call them as a and we can just call them as a person, right? Fikri is a person, Kenoli is a person, Kamal is a person. Or again, we can do the same for these things as well. We can just say Honda is a car. Delete. Honda is a car. And again, we can just say Honda is a car, yes. And also as well as a Toyota is a car as well, right? We have a generic representation of all these things. So this is called object-oriented. This is called a modeling. That means we get something common and then we create a model. And then from that model, we'll create these people. This is called in programming languages, this common area, this blueprint. Normally we call a blueprint, or this common area, we call it as a class. This is a class. For example, we can just say car is a class. Yes. And again, we can just say same thing here. Person is a class. But Kenoli or Fikri or Kamal is a, we can just say text object of this class, this person class. See, it's an object of this person class. And again, Kamal is an object of this person class. And Fikri is an object of this person class. That's the difference between the class and object. So class is a common area, it's like a blueprint, and then objects will be, we create instance, we call an instance. Instance means everything will be similar here, but only thing, Kamal will be differ from Fikri will be their own properties. Maybe properties means we might have different characteristic properties. You can just say, let me delete everything, you will understand. Let's create a car. Okay, we have our car, right? Now we have another car here. Let's say that is Honda, or maybe Honda Fit GP5, something like that. And we have another car, not Honda Fit GP5. It will be just saying, okay, Toyota. I don't know. Prius, Toyota. Prius, right? It's another car. But how? So now we're gonna say this is car is the instance, the class. We're gonna call it as a class. Say class, and these are called again objects. Object, again object, right? So when you look at the world, so this is how it works. So we have a car, and then we can say this is Honda Fit GP5. We're gonna say this is a Prius, a Toyota Prius, right? How do these things, still both are cars, but what is the difference between these things? Different is the characteristic, right? So maybe we can just say this is how the object works. We can say, I'll just pick up one, I'll just delete this Toyota one, and then I'll pick up one. then explain now as the object, right? So let's keep it as it is, the class and the object, right? This is how it works. So from the object, we might have this one, we can just say manufacturer. Okay, let's change the color to white. Let's say we can say manufacturer. And the font size 220. Yes. Right, we have the manufacturer. This is one way of doing it. And we might have, we can just say, and again, let's say white engine capacity, right? So text 20. Engine capacity. This one way of dealing with these objects. Now we have this engine capacity, manufacturer, and maybe a color, right? So font is 20, style is white. Now we have a color as well. So these are called different properties of this same object. So depending on these values, the Honda, we can just say depending on manufacturer, if I say Honda, and then it will be an Honda. If you say manufacturer is the Toyota, and then we can just Toyota. The engine capacity might be different, and the colors might be different, and the number of wheels and like interior, everything will be different. These are called objects because we created a car and then we have an Honda. So depending on this property, these are called properties or fields in the class, right? And again, there's another section called what we call just, we can just say add another one. This is different. I'm going to change the color to a different color, saying these are called drive, right? Why is this is different? This is what you can do with this sort of car. We can just drive, right? So these are properties. We can just say engine capacity is this, manufacturer is this, color is this, but this is something we do with that object, right? So drive, we drive a car. So we can just say, okay, how do you going to drive a car? I'm going to drive this fast. I'm going to drive this slow. I'm going to just go with a medium pace. So how are you going to drive is that's your thing. But depending on the car's properties, this drive method or these are called methods. Now you know we have an object, we have properties, and then we have something we can do with that car, which is drive. So this is called an object. So programming, this is bringing this into a programming world. These are called the object-oriented programming, right? This is one concept of this object-oriented programming. Let's start. These are called this. Right? Why the benefits? That means we can reuse these things, right? Let's go back to let's start with an example. We'll do the same car, right? Let's create a class. Class means this one. We're going to create a class and then we create instances like this from this class. Remember, class is a blueprint. Object will be what we create. Like we have a plan for house, we create houses, right? Same thing. Let's go back to my Python. Let's close this. Yes, we don't need this part of the code. Let's close and delete. Add another example called example 7.python. Right, this is how we start. First step, we can name like this, right? Let's say class equals car. See, this is a basic of a car, right? So normally this, if you just save car and then when you run this, try to run this code, look what will happen. Clear. Let's say Python example 7 and enter. See, it gives an error because we haven't done anything. We just define a class. We haven't given any body of this, right? So what you can do is like we just say right? We can just say pass. Normally, if you don't have any code, you can just try this method. So it's simple. It's just it just hold. It's like a placeholder, right? Now you save it. Now you run. So the code works without an issue, right? So this is called a placeholder kind of thing. It will say just passed. Let's go off, right? Now go back to your code. Let's try that, right? So if you want to create a, this is the object of the car. Normally what you can say, this is class. And then now we're going to create an instance. How are we going to create an instance? This is called an instance. We can just say Honda equals a car. See, there's nothing. I'm going to save. We just print Honda and save. Can just say, go back to my code. Let's say, try. See, it's a car object. See, now we have an object. See, it's not a class. We can just say car object main, right? So this is the basic. This is a basic structure of it. This is how you define a class. And then this is how you create an instance of that one. And this is how you get the print, right? So normally, if you remember these variables, right? You remember these variables, right? For example, you can just say, this is a variable. Say 3.14, right? If you just print this variable, you get that information. These are called variables. See, it works fine, no problem. But in this variable, in the class, normally what we're going to say is like, you can just say, these are attributes, or you can just say fields in a class. So let's begin like this. Every class has a constructor. This is called the constructor, right? Constructor means how, if you want, like when you create an instance of this class, you can just set up some default values, right? You can just say like this. Normally we can just say here, let's say maybe, let's say like this, let's say manufacturer equals Honda, right? Let's save it. Look what will happen. Now I'm going to delete these things. Now this is the same variable, right? You have Honda. If you just say now print Honda, let's go back to my code. So that's okay. That works fine. Now, if you say like this, print Honda, and you put a dot, see, you will get this information. Now let's save it. Go back. See, it says Honda. So these are called a public property. A manufacturer. You can just say color. Say blue. Oops, blue, right? Or you can just say engine capacity. Let's say, I'm going to say 1.5 engine capacity, right? Now, if you just go back and you can just say print Honda dot, and you will see manufacturer, and you will see color. See, you will see the color as a method. You can just say engine capacity. Now you have everything here, right? So this is how you create. This is the first step of the class. We just create a class of a car, and then we hard coded these values Honda. Now, so by default we say, okay, all these will be Honda. So now we can just say, even though we can just create a Toyota and say a car, so it's still the same. You can just say Toyota dot manufacturer should be Toyota, not Honda. Save. And you can just say print Toyota and manufacturer. If you save it, go back. See, it has Toyota, right? So now we have two different things. If you just say print Honda dot manufacturer, save, go back, print, we have two different cars with the same car, right? So this is how you do that. This is called a object, a class, and then these are called public properties. Now there's another one. So normally we don't work like this, right? So because when you create a car, we will gonna tell them this is the manufacturer and this is the engine capacity or maybe something like that. So this is that one called a special method inside the class called a constructor. It's called a constructor, right? The constructor, what will happen was the constructor will ask some information, or we can just do when you initiate, like within this line, these lines, you can just say do something. While you initializing this car object or car class to an object, do something, and then you don't have to worry about it because these values are not relevant to this class because it should be something. When we create a car, we have to give these values. We can't just hard code these values because every time you create a Honda, a car will be, the manufacturer will be Honda, right? So let's delete this information here, delete everything. Now we have the car class, right? Now we're going to learn about the constructor like this. The constructor will be defined as like, again, like a method, a function, you can just say def, but it's a special keyword. It should be like underscore underscore, two underscores, and you can say init, and again two underscores. Then you can just say parameters. Now I'm going to say parameters, right? Let's say self, which is the current. Now I'm going to say starting flow. Maybe we can just say something, a name. Let's say manufacturer. Manufacturer, right? So I'm going to say a manufacturer. Then it should be like this. Say self dot make. This is a car. Let's say like that. Let's say manufacturer. And create another one, self dot message. We can just say a formatting with this, not dollar, it should be F. This is a make self dot make car, right? Let's see what will happen. Now, when you just say like this, I'm going to create a Honda equals new, sorry, not new. And if you just say car, okay, what will happen? You just say car, and then when you open the brackets, now we'll ask for a manufacturer. When you initialize this one, we have to tell a manufacturer. I'm going to say Honda, right? I'm going to say a Toyota car. Let's say this is a Toyota. Let's see what will happen. Let's print first the Honda. Now print let's the Toyota. Let's save it. Let's go back to my code, clear, and let's say now you can have two different car objects. See, we have a car object and a car object. Now let's say now press dot. See, you have a make and print Honda dot message. Now you have again a make. You can just print Toyota dot message and save it. Let's go back to my code. Let's print it again. What will happen? See, Honda, this is a Honda car, and Toyota, this is a Toyota car. This is how you do that. Nothing, we haven't hard coded anything. Now we have a nice little code which will, you can just create any sort of cars here, just sending the manufacturer, right? So this is the blueprint, this is the class, and this is called, we are calling this instances, or we can just say objects, instances or objects. Now We have a Honda object, we have a Toyota object, or we have a Honda instance, or we have a Toyota index, and then we just do some work here, right? So this is how we work. Right? Let's create a method here. Now we have that part. We have done that part of the code. So let's make sure this code is now more readable. Let's create another one, a new class. Now we created this one. Let's create a new one. Let's close this. And let's say new example 8. Now we are going to learn about methods, right? So in the class, right? Let's see how we're going to do that. Let's create this class like this. Let's say class, a new class. I'm going to create a class called square, right? I'm going to initialize, create underscores in it. We know that now. Now we're going to say self. So self means you have to do that. So this is syntax. Next, I'm going to create self dot height, G-I-G-S-T, height, 2, and then self dot width, which is again 2, because this is a square, right? Now I want to create a new method. Now this is by default when you create this one. By default when you create this one, say okay, a square equals, let's say, a box. Let's say square. Sorry, square. This is square. The same thing. Now we have no parameters, just the self parameter, because this is, we have to do that. Now next step will be, I'm going to say square print square dot width. So let's say like this. F width. We have created a new square with, let's say, square dot width, and we're going to say square dot height, right? So we have created a new square. We'll save it. Let's print that and just see. Let's go back to my code. Yeah, clear, and then execute example 8. See, now we have created a square with 2 by 2, right? That's working fine. What will happen if you do this? Let's say square dot, I'm going to say I'm going to change the width or maybe the height. Let's say change the height to 3, right? You're going to say, now what will happen? Let's save. Now it says we have created a new square with 2 by 3. So it shouldn't be happening, right? So there is no, this is not a square, this is a rectangle. So square must be whatever the number we type or enter, and then it should be the same thing. If we just set the height, the width should be the same. If you set the width, the height should be the same. So now we don't allow these things to happen, because directly edit these values. It should be from a method, right? I'm going to create another method called like this, saying def set side, right? So this parameter self, okay, this, and I'm going to say new site. From this element, I'm going to say, okay, sorry, self dot height must be the new site, yes, and self dot width must be the new site. Let's save it, right? Let's save this one and just do the same. This one, okay. Next step. Before this step, I'm going to say square dot set aside, yes. I'm going to say 4. Now I'm going to do the same here. And let's see what will happen. Now let's execute the code. Clear. Say Python. See, the first one worked. That's okay. That should be happening. We created a new square with 4 by 4. But next time what we did was like we directly modified a property. And then we broke our code again. So this should not happen. We can't directly allow any user or developer to change this value. It should be always using this method. So for that, we need to spend some time and looking at we call it like access level. So how do we allow people to do these things? Are we going to allow these things? Right? So, or else, how do we just stop people tampering with this line, right? Normally, what we do is like on Python, if you want like this is called, when you just type a variable name like this, these are called a public variable or public property, public method, right? That's why we can directly access these things, right? So this should not. Normally, what we do is like, okay, we control the access of this, because if somebody directly do the height or width, the programming will now break, right? So let's say now to stop these things, we have to introduce two like this. You have to say two underscores, right? Now say two underscores and two underscores, right? Let's save it. Let's save it. And this line, look at this one. If you just say square dot, see, you will have this height value. See, now you will have this height value, but still, if you just say 3, right? Let's say 3, and let's run this code and just see what will happen. Now we get an error saying square object has no attribute of width. See, that means there is nothing here. This line failed. So let's remark these lines for now. And this. Let's save it again. Let's try it again. Look what happens. Let's see. Now, just went through it, but just enter here. Okay, now we have, yeah, self dot. Yeah, we need to scroll. Right, let's say now the height value, it doesn't know about the height, or this doesn't know about anything else. Let's say how do we going to print these things, right? So print yeah, we have that information, right? Okay, let's see, let's try to print these things. Print, the values should be like this. Let's go back. Now, see, look what happened was like we have created a new width and then square and height attribute error. So this is called an attribute error, which is object has no attribute width, because these are, when you just put two underscores, that means these are called private. That means it belongs to only to this class. This class only, you can't refer to it. See, you can't get this information. So we have to find a method how to get this information. Now, normally what we can just say is like we have to create setters and getters. These are called setters and getters. Now we have a setter here. Now we need to create a different functionality to get. You can just directly access these variables, setters and getters. So now next step, what we're going to do is like we learned about these private variables. We're going to delete all those things. Now these are private. Nobody can access. Now we have a setter. This is called a setter. Let's call this is a setter. Again, now we have to create a getter. Get this information, right? How are you going to get this information? So let's say I'm going to set get height. So I'm going to say def get height. GIST self. Yes. Let's say return. Sorry. Return self dot now. This is available right now. See, get height. You can do the same for definition def get width self. Oh, sorry. When you say return self dot width, see, you get two different types. Now we have a nice little class. We have a setter. So now I'm going to say a new square. Square equals new square. Yes, please. We have a new square. Sorry, it's square. We have this new square. Now, what you can do is like now, let's say set square dot set aside. And say aside will be 4. Now print with formatting. We have a square with now this one. This is how you get this. You can say square dot get width by square dot get height. We have a square width by this one for each side. Let's save this. Now we saved it. See the code. See. So we have a class of square, and then we have a constructor. Let's say let's name this as a constructor. Constructor, which is by default value we get 2 by 2. And then now we have a setter of this one. Now we have two getters. Getter for height and getter for width. See, simple as that. So what will happen? This double underscore will be, and these are private properties inside the variable. It won't be accessible for the outside. Right? Let's save and let's try. Now clear. Is that the error was because I haven't put the curly brackets, because these are methods. Now it should be curly brackets, not just variables. Let's go back to my code and clear. Execute. See, we have a square with 4 by 4 for each side. So now the code is clean. These are called information hiding. Another word we call an object called index, because we hide the how it works inside. Only thing we have to just give a value and then we'll get this information. These are called encapsulation as well, right? Encapsulation encoding. So we hide the mechanism people won't know. Anybody who's, because this class is not visible, anybody who's just working with this class will see only, create a square and set aside, and then you can just have a get width and get height as parameters, right? So this is called object content, and again another name we can just call methods, and then we learn another word called encapsulation, right? Encapsulation, yeah. And another one we learned here, these are called access levels. Access levels or scope, because these variables, these two properties are fields are private, because we put two underscores, then that means it is private, it's available only to this class, so it's not available for outside, right? So that's why we call it as access levels or scope. Within this scope, within the, this is the scope, like if condition within the scope can access, out of the scope means you can just access, we can't access it from out there, right? That's how it works. Right, another thing we can just say, we can add decorators, right? So if you want actually if you want to put an height, a value, or maybe you can just maybe imagine, like, let's say a value like this. I'm going to create something like this. Let's say a definition, we're going to create a color, say self, say color value, right? Next, I'm going to return, sorry, the one I'm going to create another initial attribute self. Maybe white, right? So I'm going to set this value to like this, sorry, self dot color equals color value, right? This is how it works. Now what will happen was, this one we can say or maybe let's not the color, let's say not about this one, let's say you want to get the height only, not just get height. You can just say, you can't just say set or getter unless it's a function. You can just create like this, right? A different method of getting one. Def can just say just the height, give me the height, and self. I'm going to say return. It's the same thing, return self dot underscore height, right? So this is one, just if you want the height, and then you can just do the same for this def. Let me get the width, not just saying get or set self. It's the same, return self dot width, right? So this is how it works. Now you can just say a special, we can just say like this. So if you just say okay, a decorator, we can just say remove some decorate this one like this. How do you do that? And the decorator is saying at property. See, it's a property now. Can do the same. So yeah, at property. See, now if I just come here and just say there's a square dot height. See, now you can just straight away get the height. It treated as a property, say height int any. See, it will return a value. So what will happen if you just say 20 here and just run it. See, attribute error, you can't set the attribute. You can't do that, right? So this is how it works. So we have this square dot height. So you can't do that. Only thing is it can be read. This you can just say print square dot height. See, it's much more cleaner. But like this, see, it looks get height. It looks a method, but still this is a property. It's nice way of doing it, rather than using this sort of definitions, right? I'll prefer this one. If you have like properties like this, make sure the setter is different, but the getter should be the same, right? So now let's print it and just try it again. See, now it says 4. Right? We learned about something simple, a class, right? So how do we create? We learn about something, a class. We created a square class, and then we learn about setters, we learn about getters, and then we learn about a property, these decorations. There are lots of things. Like now, this class about to mention about, like, we have learned so many things from for these past 4 days. I recommend you guys to like learn by yourself, to go through more. Like for example, how do we do inheritance? Right, inheritance on Python. So for example, inheritance. So how are you gonna do that, right? For example, let's say this is a square, and let's say we'll start with this another example, say example 9 and Python. Yes, let's say inheritance. So this is how this is another concept. We have learned about encapsulation. We are going to learn about inheritance. It's a quick thing. Let's say like this class. I want to create a person class. Person. This is a person, right? Now, a person might have different methods. He might have a definition for this is the constructor. I'm going to say self. Let's say self dot parent, or maybe person attribute, or maybe a message. Let's say like I am a person. This is the person, right? And another method called like let's say another method called like person message. Self again. I will say return hello. Self dot message, right? This is straightforward. This is so far what we have learned, right? If you just say okay, print person, it will do something, and then you can just say a new person, and I'm going to say person. Let's say print person, new person dot message. Let's save it and run. Already we learned about these things, like we know about that. Let's go back to my code. I'm going to clear it. Say Python and dot 9.8 example.9. Yes, please. Now I'm going to say the type is, see, the class, the main, the person type, and it displays my person. This is the person class. Imagine from this person class, let's come back here from this person class. Now we have a person class here. Now let's create a person class with the same things, right? But some extra information. I'm going to create a class called employee, right? Employee, and it will be the same thing. Def, say init, so this will be the employee constructor, whatever the constructor for the employee, right? Now it will be the same, and now I'm going to create another method called def employee message self. This is an extra for employee. Return f hello, I am an employee, and I have something extra. Right? It should be a person. Next step will be how do you going to inherit? Let's yeah. Let's keep as it is. Let's say pass. Right? How do you going to inherit these things? So this is how you inherit. So we have a person class. Now for inheritance, I'm going to say you start a bracket saying from the person. This is how you inherit from Python. Now employee will be from person, and this self will be the person's constructor. If we want to pass something to the parent, if we just say parent dot, maybe you can just say person dot, see underscore init. You can pass something to the parent as well, init, saying something like that. So person message, you have this one, init, and pass that message to the parent, right? So you can just do the same. So this is one way of doing it, creating a person. So for example, if you just say person and then I'm going to say self dot message saying I am an employee, and if you pass this message saying self dot message, now look what will happen. We have a person class. Now this person, let's print the employee and new employee and employee, and print new employee dot person message. Not sorry, not the person message, employee message. See, employee message. Now when you save it, let's run it. Now you will see the class is person and I am a person, right? Now the class is the employee bound. Sorry, I think I missed this employee message. Should be like this. Save. Right? Now you can just say hi, I'm a person. Now the next thing is like you have the parent class, the parent information as well. You can just say new employee dot, and then you have this person message as well. See, you have this one as well. So that means it's coming from this class. See, this class, the person is there. We have a person message. Now something for extra for this employee message, we have this employee message, and then still you can just say person message as well. See, from the employee class. So if you run this again, see, I'm a person as well. So we have different message, employee message. So see, now this is how you create inheritance on this things. Now I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and then we can start some Q&A. Right. So let's go back to. It's over to you guys, so we can just start some Q&A. It's. Hello. Hi.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Fikri, for today's content on Python. So now it's time for Q&A session. Let's look at the submitted questions. The first question is, how can we use variables private to a class function outside of that class as a global variable?
So I think I mentioned about it right now within these two underscores. I think you have the answer for that question. So we can use these things like for definition and then you have underscore. But if you want, normally it's not good practice to use private class in outside. You can, but you can just say the class name dot again this thing. So don't use it because make it the private variable. The main scope of the private variable is like make it private. It should be inside the class.
Okay, the second question is, what is the meaning of def underscore init underscore?
Okay, this def we know because def means we create a method or maybe a function. Def is a keyword to create a function. If you use it inside a class, it will turn into a method of that class. If you just there's a special method in every class called the underscore init underscore, which is it's called a constructor. Constructor means it will execute that method will automatically execute it when you create an instance of that class. That means if you have a person class with init and then if you just create a person object, that method will be executed and then you can just set some default values. Yeah, this is called a constructor in object-oriented concepts.
Okay, the last question is how to set result of a function that means return value to input of another function through a if statement.
I think I didn't get the requirement. So what sort
Okay,
of requirement?
How to set result of a function on that means return value to input of another function through a if statement.
Actually, I haven't used those kind of things. I don't know why we need this like a return of a function. And what we can do is like, if you need something return of a function, you just store it in a variable and then use an if statement and then check it and then put it as a parameter as another function. You can do that. Yeah.
So that's the only, those three were the only submitted questions today. So if anyone is having any questions, they can unmute themselves and raise up their questions.
Yes. So make sure these you guys are just go through all these lessons and then next week we're gonna just try to build a small application. So we're gonna use some external class, like we tried to create a web application because there were some questions last couple of weeks. How do we create a web application? So we're going to use this Python knowledge to create a small web application next week. So let's hope you just learn these things and be prepared for next week.
So I guess there's no any questions anymore. So that's the end of Q&A session. We have shared our social media links of our speaker, Benzyme Ventures, and also Edvicon International in our chat box. You can get to know about our speaker and also the two organizations and get updated on upcoming events by following social media platforms. And also we will keep sharing the attendance link for about another 5 minutes after the session ends in Zoom and FB Live as well. After that, we're going to close the link. So please make sure to fill that form. Once again, I would like to thank our speaker, Mr. Fikri Ismail, for the valuable information shared with us today. So we have come to the end of our today's session of our workshop. We hope to see you all at the last session of our workshop that will be on 16th October from 5 p.m. onwards. We will inform you all in the future as well. Thank you for everyone for the participation today. That's the end of today's session. Have a good night. Stay safe.
Thank you.